All right. So, first and foremost, thank you for joining us for this college admissions mastery course or in secrets to success for admissions and specifically for international applicants. I think that's the most important thing is that we've been doing this a lot for US applicants, but given my own personal background, which I'll talk about shortly, we really wanted to focus this also on international applicants because I think international applicants have a lot of difficulty trying to unravel and navigate the craziness of the American system as it pertains to admissions, as well as in some instances the Canadian system, which we'll also talk about, and we'll also, I think we'll kind of quickly go through it. But the British system, I studied in a British school myself. So I'm quite familiar with the British education system, but we'll also talk about at least from the high school level, but we'll talk a little bit about the university system as well, but less so about Europe in terms of Germany, Italy, and some of the European countries. Our main focus, and especially as a company, is the US system because it's possibly the more complicated one that really requires a lot of attention and a lot of work. So without further ado, let's get started. I'll give you guys a little bit of background myself. So I studied in Egypt, did my international baccalaureate there, and then also studied in Spain. Studied Spanish and also some undergraduate studies there, and then did my master's in England, as you'll see down there in Cambridge, where I did a master's or an MPhil in international relations. After studying in Egypt, and doing the international baccalaureate, and thank God I did the IB, and thank God I did well enough to be able to get into universities in the United States. I started off at Santa Barbara, transferred to UCLA, and then from UCLA, eventually, when I graduated, thankfully I graduated near top of my class, was able to get into Berkeley for law school to do my law degree, and focused a little bit more on international law, where I eventually worked as an international development lawyer, and I'm still a lawyer now. During law school, I did my master's in Cambridge, as I mentioned, in international relations. And then about 8 years after that, I did my second master's in public administration at the Harvard Kennedy School, where I received a full scholarship from an international government. So again, I've been very, very fortunate over the course of my academic career and so forth to really be able to hyper-focus on what these universities want, especially someone like myself, where I studied 8 years in Egypt, to be able to get into universities in the United States, whether they're Ivy League or whether they're state schools, big schools, small schools, and so forth. Okay, so this is my background. I started Right Track Admissions in 2008, largely based on my own life experience, kind of really trying to figure out how to get into top programs, even though I had lower than average standardized scores. What I mean by that is my SATs were low, my LSAT was low, my GRE was low, but I was still able to kind of overcome those barriers and get into top programs, as you see there. All right. That's a little bit of background of myself. In terms of just kind of housekeeping rules, if you guys have any questions, post it in the chat. Do not be shy. Post it in the chat. I will do my best to respond to those in real time. If not, then I can respond to them during breaks. But I'm happy to respond to those questions. Make it as interactive as possible. All right. So also, just so that you know, the bulk of our work today and what we're going to be covering will be coming from the College Admissions Mastery course. And this is a two-part course. The first part is a series of videos, and the second part is a guidebook, really that kind of interact together. The guide is about, I think it's about 16 chapters, and it covers everything you need to know about who makes a great college candidate and if college is right for you, all the way through to how to succeed in college. And most recently, we added a chapter, an epilogue on future-proofing your career, especially with the advent of AI and what's going on there. So how to pick a path that really is conducive to succeed without being deemed to be irrelevant, without being seen to be obsolete in terms of the career path you chose. So that also is in the book. We're going to be talking a lot about these concepts over the course of our webinar today. The good news is if you attend the webinar today, you will have a chance to get this course for free. So you'll be entered in to win the course for free. So please do watch all the way through the end so that we can have your email, and one of you will be chosen to get the course for free. Others will also be able to get a discount, I believe about 25% at the end of the course. So let's make sure that you stick around and you ask questions, stay interactive so that we can help you in the best way possible. All right. Okay. So what I want to start talking about is how to develop your brand. Every one of us has a kind of brand of their own. I guess if I had a brand, it would be that I really like to motivate people. It's about guiding people. It's also about advocacy. That's why I chose law. So I start to create this brand of a person who's very curious, a person who likes advocacy, a person who likes, being a wordsmith and public speaking. And then you start creating this image of yourself and you start to justify and reinforce it with life experiences. And that becomes your brand. And that brand also dictates what you want to do in your life, who you want to be, what legacy you want to leave. So let's kind of start thinking about how do you develop your brand. Now, I have to preface this by saying if you are applying to college this year, well, you don't have too much time to develop your brand. We need to then figure out how to unearth your brand. We need to figure out exactly what is the best way to allow you to kind of stand out as an applicant based on what you've done. But if you have another year or 2 or 3 before applying, then you have more time to develop your brand into the best brand possible for admissions purposes. So let's talk a little bit about what it means to develop your brand. All right. When applying to college, they really look for these 5 C's. I try to make it as easy as possible, the 5 C's. And they really fall into 2 major categories, IQ and EQ, right? IQ being raw intelligence, right? Intellectual content. And EQ being more emotional content. So how do you deal with other people? How do you interact? How do you lead? How do you support? How open-minded are you? How well do you take criticism? How well you are able to empathize and be compassionate with others? That's EQ and IQ, both of which, if those are our 2 main pillars, these 5 C's will add, elements to each one of those. So the first one is collaborative. These colleges want to see someone who has a collaborative spirit, someone who has the ability to be a great team player, as well as a great leader, team player and leader. So we want to showcase how you are collaborative. The second one is creative. What skills do you have? What talents do you have? And how do you approach life from a multidisciplinary perspective? How do you solve issues from a multidisciplinary perspective? That is extremely important, and that requires creative thinking. And that's what these schools want to see. And I have to tell you that being creative and solving with a multidisciplinary perspective and mindset is exactly how you're going to stay relevant from AI, because AI doesn't look at things from a multidisciplinary perspective. It doesn't take an experience of this and add the experience to this, which are completely unrelated. But you'll be able to do that if you look at things from a creative perspective. And that is really a very, very important skill set to have and a way of thinking to have. Compassion. We spoke about that as one of the core values of EQ, which is the ability to really kind of give back to others, to be open-minded about others, to be empathetic of the plight of others, right? So you want to showcase where you have a strong sense of compassion, where you've exhibited that, which could be in volunteer or community service. Curiosity, which is to me one of the most important factors of life. I've consistently maintained a high level of curiosity in what I do and how I do it. And that's really allowed me to do what I'm doing with you right now. You guys are about 20, 25 years younger than me, but I can still relate to certain aspects of who you are simply because I have a strong sense of curiosity. I want to learn about things intergenerationally, right? So having a strong sense of curiosity, which comes from passion and intellectual pursuits, extremely important when you're thinking about how to design yourself and brand yourself and create those core values that the schools will look for in what you do before college. And finally, they want to see a strong sense of commitment. They don't want someone to enter college and drop out after a semester, or struggle to figure out what their major is going to be 2 years into it, or then decide that school is just not for them and they just do poorly in school, right? And suffer. So what we really need to do is we really need to figure out and make sure that you have a strong sense of commitment in terms of what you do, that strong work ethic and being driven, which really will come out in your applications and in what you have done and demonstrated that will put into your application. So I want you to think about those 5 core C's because they're super, super important in terms of who you are and what, how you want to espouse, the personal brand that the schools will really be attracted to. And that is so important to who you are and how to stand out as an applicant. Okay. So constantly keep those 5 things in mind and what you're doing to make sure that you're exhibiting those 5 things. All right. Now, I've talked about the 5 things. We've kind of alluded to how they kind of stand out. Here is how you can live those qualities in your life that allows you to develop that personal brand. Okay. Quickly, let's go through it. From the academic side, it's maybe taking those advanced courses. Maybe in an American system, would be taking those AP classes, right? I believe it's, I shouldn't even think, advanced placement. That's right. That's what the AP is. So you've got advanced placement classes, right? That you would take, or internationally would be the IB, right? It would be certain courses that really showcase your intellectual caliber, the books you read, right? Taking math classes, taking science courses, right? Those STEM related courses. I'll give you an example. Some schools will ask you, tell us about your favorite podcast, or tell us about what magazines you read frequently, or what was the last 3 books you read. So you want to be well read, and you really want to have invested in that because that's going to come out in your essays, right? They will ask those questions, some of those shorter questions. So you want to make sure that you've kind of flexed your curiosity, your commitment, right? From those 5 C's in your academic pursuits. Then you have life experiences. What are the challenges you've faced? What are the hardships you've overcome? Those are things that you're going to be able to write about because it shows a sense of vulnerability, of compassion. If you are vulnerable yourself, you will have a sense of compassion for others. That's the concept, right? Think about those summer activities, right? What have you done over the course of the last couple of summers, this past summer, next summer, right? Volunteer activities, summer camp, self-directed projects, things that you've done saying, you know what, I'm going to do this nonprofit venture, or I'm going to start this company, or I'm going to help support X, right? What are you doing during those summers to really maximize your time, to show a sense of commitment, right? To show a sense of purpose, to show a sense that you're not being lazy and just Netflix and chilling, but that you're an active individual, right? Which again, these schools want to see that level of commitment, right? Extracurricular activities that you're taking on. Here's where you can do so many great things. But I always say, and we'll talk a little bit about this because I've got this question before, is that you don't want to do 100 activities very superficially. You want to do 2 or 3 activities in depth, or what we say in America, doing something a mile deep but an inch wide. So in international parlance, that would be a kilometer deep and a centimeter wide. Instead of doing something a kilometer wide and a centimeter deep, okay? So you want to really get into certain things that allow, again, showcase collaboration, commitment, curiosity, right? Those key qualities that the schools are going to want to see. Then there's volunteer activities, right? So that's, again, and we talked a little bit about that in terms of how you do that over the summer, but again, those volunteer activities, that really kind of showcase against that sense of commitment and compassion in what you do, okay? And finally, internships and part-time. Some people have that opportunity to do it, some people don't. I know when I lived in Egypt, it was a little bit tougher when I was in high school to take on part-time work. In America, it's a lot easier because there's a lot of those opportunities. But if you have the chance over those summers to do those kind of work opportunities, definitely do it because, again, it shows how serious you are, how committed you are, that element of continuity of your story. So let's quickly take a look again at those things, being collaborative, being creative. Again, those creative factors can come into those extracurricular activities right there, right? They can also come into volunteer, or they can come into summer activities, in terms of that sense of creativity. Commitment, curiosity, compassion. We've talked about, again, numerous times, and a lot of these areas in here in terms of how to live your story. So I really, really want you to think about those 5 C's. And in fact, I want to add a 6th C for you to think about, which is being capable. Because what you do want to showcase to the school is that you have the academic wherewithal, the intellectual wherewithal, not just a sense of curiosity, but also the capability to execute on that curiosity to really get those great grades. So in fact, we're going to make it 6 C's. You guys are going to be the first to listen to this. 6 C's. And the last one is a sense of capability in terms of showcasing that you have what it takes to succeed in school. All right. Now that we've talked about developing your personal brand, who you are, right? Now let's take that brand, the stories you created, everything that you've been able to assemble, and start to assemble your application materials. Guys, I know I went through a lot. I know it's high level, but please, if you have any questions, ask in the comments so I can answer those. Now, here are the core parts of the application process. Okay, let's quickly go through them. You want to select the school and the major. The common application, start thinking about that because the common application goes to 900 schools. So you also want to start going through that. Actually, now it's almost at 1,000 schools or over 1,000 schools since this year. And the application for the common application is already opened. So if you're thinking about this now, get on top of it because it's already opened. And I can tell you your competition in America is well ahead of you if you haven't even started this process. Once you figure out the school and you figure out which common application, you figure out which schools are connected to the common application, now you need to start focusing on the school-specific essays in addition to the common application and the application question. I gave you an example where some of the schools will ask you, what are the last 3 books you read and why, right? You also want to assemble your resume and your CV, which I think is extremely important, right? In terms of basically putting down everything that you've done. And this actually pops out here in the common application because in part of the common application, they actually ask you for the activities section, right? Where you're going to kind of unearth your resume. But some of the schools you're applying to are not going to be taken to common application. So you have to have a resume ready to rock and roll, right? That you can send to those schools that don't take the common application, which has the activities in it. So in the resume, you want to kind of focus on, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but these are some of the highlights, the top level highlights that you're going to be talking about in your resume. So that's another component that we're going to discuss, okay? Then you've got the standardized tests, ACT, SAT. Again, if you're applying to US schools, I believe the Canadian schools, I think, also take the SATs, that could be changing. Obviously, UK schools definitely don't. The letters of recommendation, financial aid opportunities. As I said, 2/3 of US college students receive financial aid in some form or other. I know I did, and that was super, super important for me to help me get through college with minimal debt. And then finally, we'll talk about the college interview itself. So we've got a lot to cover. These are the major components. Again, selecting the school, figuring out the common app, figuring out the school specific essays, putting together your resume, signing up for the standardized testing, getting your letters of recommendation lined up, getting your financial aid lined up, and getting the college interview. And then for some of you internationals, we're going to go through a checklist as well towards the end of this webinar, where we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other factors, such as housing, visa, and so on and so forth, as well, that impact you. All right. Now, when picking the right university, picking the university itself, I want you to kind of quickly think about these factors. The location, if it's in a city or in the countryside, the academic program, how big it is, the reputation, where does it rank, how much does the program cost? If it's a state school, does that work for you? Do you want to go to a private liberal arts school that's on the smaller side? Do you want to go to a school that has a huge international network, which obviously I think is super important for you? What kind of career development opportunities do they offer? How accessible is the faculty? So these are just some of the qualities, some of the, let's say, factors that you need to think about to pick the right university. There's never going to be the perfect university. There's going to be different trade-offs, but definitely this will help you get on the right path. And what you want to do, though, is do not do the following things that I've highlighted right here. You don't want to follow your friends and family, right? Just because your father went there, your mother, your best friend, that doesn't matter because they are different people from you. So you want to go to the place that fits you well. Just because your best friend's going there, what happens after year 2? Your best friend sucks and you decide, I don't like this person anymore. And now you have a whole nother group of people, or you don't have a group of people because you went to the school for that person and now you're on your own, right? So you don't want to just follow because a friend of yours went, because you will create your own tribe, your own community when you get there, right? Also, you don't want to be in a position applying to a school only for a certain major, because maybe halfway there you decide, you know what, I don't like this major anymore, and the major I really want, the school doesn't have, right? And don't attend only for financial aid. If you get into a lower tier program that gives you a full aid package, but you get into Harvard with zero aid, let's say, I think going to Harvard is going to be a much better choice, because you'll have more opportunities and more resources later on in your life to get fantastic jobs that will easily help you pay off whatever debt you incurred, right? And then one of the big mistakes is not diversifying your application pool of universities that you select, right? So some people will just apply to reach schools. Reach schools are schools that you have about a 0 to 15% chance of admission. Typical schools like that look like Stanford, Princeton, Yale, Harvard, right? Those are going to be your classic reach schools. And some people will be like, I'm only going to apply to those. And then you don't get in. And then what do you do? Especially as an international student, the options are a little bit more limited. So like in America, if you don't get in, well, you go to community college for 2 years, and then you transfer to a bigger transfer to a 4-year university. Internationally, you may not have that optionality, right? So just something to kind of think about from that perspective. So what I would advise, and what we've advised our clients to great effect, is that you want to apply to a combination of reach schools, 0 to 15%, target schools, which should be the bulk of them, which should be anywhere from 15% chance of admission all the way through maybe like 40% chance of admission, and then safety school, which are about 40% chance of admission all the way to like almost you're guaranteed, because the school is not ranked very high. So you can see right there on the scale, on the axis, you've got the number of applications, and on the y-axis, you've got the chances of admission. And I would say I would apply to, probably in terms of reach, I would probably apply to about 3 or 4 reach schools, 6 or 7 target schools, and 3 or 4 safety schools. Okay. Very, very important when selecting the schools themselves. All right. Quickly, I'll go through this. I don't want to spend too much time on it. When you go to there, here's some things to think about in terms of when you go to the campus and you check it out itself. You want to check out the lecture halls, and are they big? Are they small? Is the residential life nice? Is it feel safe? Is it on campus? What are the different student groups that exist, right? What's the vibe on campus? Does it feel like it's very stuffy and academic? Does it feel a little bit more easy? Does it feel a little bit more comfortable and relaxing, right? What's the city around it feel like? I went to UCLA, so there it was in Westwood, right between Bel Air and Wilshire Boulevard, that goes straight down to downtown Los Angeles. And so I felt like I had the beach 3 miles away. We had downtown that wasn't too far away. You had Bel Air and the cool homes in Beverly Hills. So we had a very nice place to kind of be, and also great opportunities for jobs, right? Because you're in a big city. So these are some things to think about in terms of looking at the schools itself and kind of getting the vibe when you go visit the school. And then here I kind of dig a little bit deeper in terms of that process, right? So these are the questions to ask and what you should be thinking about when you visit the school. Like, write everything down when you go there. When you speak to people, write down their names, right? If you have a chance to audit a class, to check out a class, do it. If you have a chance to walk through the dorms, do it. If you have a chance to go through the gym, do it, right? If you have a chance to walk downtown and see kind of how everything feels, is it safe, is it secure, is it cool, is it fun, is it hip? Get all that information, write it all down when you do a school campus visit, because that will give you the firepower to then use when you start putting together your application materials. All right. Quickly, I don't want to dig too deep into this because we have a lot of information to cover, but these are some of the main factors between US schools and Canadian schools. As I show you there, some of the schools take the SATs. Student visas are easier oftentimes in Canada than they are in the US. The applications are a little bit later in terms of rolling admission than US schools. They have about 600,000 international students in Canada versus about 1 million in the US. Actually, that's crazy. I would have imagined there's a lot more in the US than in Canada, just given the sheer population dynamics. But it just goes to show there's a lot of international students in Canada. So I kind of put some things there to think about. I want to, as I said, spend too much time. We've definitely helped applicants with Canadian universities, which we just feel are a little easier applications and easier to get into in some cases than US universities, which again, in Canada, there's probably a good 20, 30 great universities for Canadian standards. In the US, obviously, you can imagine how many different universities, which makes sense. The US is about 10 times bigger than Canada in terms of population size and so forth. Well, not size, because geographically Canada is absolutely massive, but most of it's unpopulated. um, so then you think about UK schools. Again, as I said, I went to Cambridge, but I went for my master's degree, not my undergraduate. But in terms of the way it works, as you can see, the first point there, they use the UCAS form, which basically allows you to apply to, I believe, 5 schools with one application. So so much more straightforward than American universities. It makes a lot more sense from that perspective. But what I dislike personally from UK schools is that you pretty much need to know what you're going to study from day one. And it's also a 3-year degree in typical cases, not a 4-year degree like in America, which has its pros and cons. But I think the reason that in America they have the extra year is because we do general education classes, which is great because it gives you an opportunity to really kind of expand, expand the different opportunities in terms of thinking about what you want to do. So maybe when you're 17, you're thinking, yeah, I really want to do medicine. And then you don't know any better because in the end of the day, you only thought about it when you were a teenager. But maybe in America, what they'll do is they'll give you opportunities to take classes in science-based classes, STEM-based classes. Then you'll take courses in engineering-related classes. Then you'll take some classes in the humanities and business. And suddenly you're like, wow, actually, I don't like medicine. I really want to go to business. Or I really want to go in engineering. And so then you can shift along those 4 years into another field. So it gives you more flexibility. Just something I really want to kind of highlight there. Typically, it's lower tuition than the United States. The United States is super expensive in terms of tuition. That is very true. And in terms of international students, I've got quite a few there in the UK that allow you to also kind of, grow and so forth. But obviously, the UK is a cosmopolitan of different identities already from the beginning. So it's always an advantage. And that's kind of what I gleaned when I studied in Cambridge. It was just so beautifully international. But again, I'm very biased personally to US schools. I think they were absolutely incredible. The higher education, not necessarily the high schools, but the higher education, in a lot of ways. And it gave me a lot of life experiences that I was able to use later on. All right. How do you select the ideal major? So here are a couple of things I want you to think about. Passion. What do you love to do? When you zone out, what seems to me to feel like work for me may be absolutely lovely for you, and you just lose track of time and you just absolutely love it. So think about what you're passionate about, what you really just focus on. Everything kind of closes off and you just find yourself reading it, learning about it just sheerly because you love it. Think about your career. If you want to do med school and then become a doctor, then you obviously have to pick and actually even for that in America, it's a little bit different because you take these pre-med courses, but you can major in near anything you want as long as you take the pre-med courses, which is great. So I tend to encourage people who are applying to schools, are applying to med school, to take something fun in terms of a major like literature or business or sociology or even engineering, something as long as they know they're going to do very well in it and they enjoy it and it offsets the difficulty of those pre-med courses and they do well. I tend to encourage them to do that because what that does is that it helps them already start thinking about and having a multidisciplinary perspective of life that helps them better, showcases them better as a more multidimensional student and future doctor, which is really what I think people want to see is doctors that are not just myopically focused on medicine, but think about medicine in a greater context and know about different things so that they can empathize and connect with their patients. Okay. So think about what major you want to think about that will help you along your career path. Earning potential. Do you want to select a major and a career path that is high earning, but maybe more restricting? Or something that is less high earning, but that could be more, let's say, more encompassing, that you feel more comfortable with, that aligns with your passions. Are you planning to go to graduate school? Does your future career pursuit require to go to graduate school, like medical school, like engineering, like business school, like law school? Then you want to think about that as well in terms of your major and what is conducive for that graduate program. Job demand, which I think is extremely important now, that we need to talk about, which is, pursuing certain areas that are slowly but surely becoming more and more redundant because of technology, because of AI, for example, today, and God knows what's going to be tomorrow. Now we're talking about generative AI and all kinds of other things. So there's going to be careers are going to be obsolete. So you want to pick a path that will help you in terms of your job demand and what path you want to go. And again, we talk about this extensively in the guidebook that we created under the college admissions mastery course, in terms of picking fields that really are going to be conducive, that are going to be around for the next 20, 30, 40 years, so that you're not declared redundant. All right. Those are just some things to think about. And right there, I just say, as I say, 1 in 3 students typically in America change their major, which is amazing. In a lot of ways in America, which in the UK you can't do, because once you're in that major, you're in that major. It's very hard to kind of pivot and change majors. In America, it's very normal. All right. Let's kind of quickly shift gears and start getting into more of the nitty gritty of the application itself and the different components. Sorry, I'm running out of oxygen and water. All right, cool, great. Thank you for asking a question. Do you think going to a good undergraduate school is more important than going to a good graduate school? Great question, Hussein. Great question. Why is that a great question? Because literally a guy was asking me that question a couple of weeks ago. They're like, you know what? I'm just going to go to a low-ranked school in Virginia and then double down to go to a better graduate program. And I said, there's pros and cons. In my opinion, if you go to a great undergraduate school and you get into a great undergraduate school, in some cases, you don't have to go to graduate school, because if you go to Harvard as an undergrad, you probably don't have to go to graduate school because you have a great undergraduate foundation. If you go to a great undergraduate school, you'll have better job opportunities. Go to great undergraduate schools, you'll meet people at a younger age that are going to be very impressionable. If we have a correlation between the caliber of students, and again, I hate to say it, but maybe there's a higher correlation between a better ranked school and the caliber of students, those who have more intellectual prowess, those who are more akin to succeed in life, maybe, I don't know. There's no 100% correlation, but there is that. If you go to a really low ranked school, maybe these are people who don't care that much about academics, that just have to go to university. But if you go to a better ranked school, that can make a difference. And maybe there's diminishing returns. Maybe if you go to UCLA versus Harvard, well, Harvard's really tough because, again, the student caliber, when you have 2 to 3% people being accepted, it's you're going to be getting some really top level students. But if you're surrounded by smart people who have a high desire to do great things in their life, they're going to provide you with an incredible network that's going to help you in life to get those better jobs. You're going to meet better professors. If there's a correlation, which I believe there is, there's just so much more you'll learn. I started in Santa Barbara. It's ranked maybe 50th in America. I transferred to UCLA because I just felt like I wasn't receiving the kind of intellectual caliber I wanted. And so I transferred. And that graduate from UCLA gave me such a great foundation to get into schools that were better and better and better. Berkeley, Cambridge, Harvard, right? So because I aimed for that, because my brain was locked in, because I had more confidence, because I met some incredible people. So I truly believe that is important. You do not know if you're going to eventually go to graduate school. Maybe you don't. So you can't say, don't worry about it. I'm going to go to a crappy undergraduate because I'm going to go to grad school. How do you know you're going to get to grad school? How many are you going to end up getting there? And how do we know that when you go to an undergraduate and you don't do well, you'll have the grades to get into a top graduate school? You may never be able to, right? So these are all counterfactual ifs and buts. So my advice to you, Hussein, is if you have the opportunity to get into a great undergraduate school, go for it, because it lays such an incredible foundation to do all kinds of things and gives you optionality, which you otherwise would not have if you go to a really low-ranked school, right? Which could affect the friends you make, your confidence, your mindset, the job opportunities, and all kinds of things. So again, that may be my bias, but I have seen that it definitely does work in a lot of ways. Aim, as they say, shoot for the stars, land on the moon. And then you can go back to the stars when you're on the moon than if you're on Earth. Wow, I just made that up. But hopefully that illustrates what I'm talking about, all right? But great question. I really appreciate you guys. Please ask those questions. It gets me even more excited when I go through this. All right, resume. Guys, this is a structure. I don't want to get too bogged down in it, but start off with education because you're applying to an educational program, right? College. Then we've got professional experiences. If you have them, as I said, it's applicable. If not, don't worry about it. But if you have, put it in there, because that's going to, again, showcase that key qualities of a sense of collaboration, curiosity, commitment, even creativity in some ways, right? Volunteer experiences, which I hope you guys have, because the schools want to see that sense of compassion. So you want to put it in there. Remember, guys, a lot of that personal branding we spoke about has to be captured somewhere. And that being captured, a lot of it's going to be in your resume. So you want to have it in there in terms of the volunteer experiences, extracurricular, which showcases leadership, teamwork, curiosity, compassion, commitment, all that kind of stuff. I'm forgetting what the other freaking C was. Let's go back because I'm going to freaking lose my mind if I can't remember it. What is it? What is it? What is it? It is commitment, compassion, creativity, curiosity, commitment. Okay, collaboration. Good. I'm using all of them. Good. I just kind of keep wanting to emphasize those as you go through the different parts of your application so that you know kind of where it lands, right? We've got the extracurriculars we spoke about, and these are kind of some of the things I want you to highlight. The activity, what it is, what your role was within it, how long you did it for, what were the dates, and then emphasize the leadership and teamwork, experience, and impact. I keep saying the word impact. Impact meaning not just what you did, but what impact it had. Measurable results, right? Super important. Interests and skills that are unique to you. Don't just tell me you like to read and run and travel, but tell me what kind of travel: adventure travel, cultural travel, immersive travel, right? Think about, I like to cook. What kind of cooking do you cook? Middle Eastern cuisine, Southeast Asian cuisine, home cooked cuisine. Maybe you like eating from food trucks or whatever it is, right? If you like, you just don't tell me you like to run. Tell me that you run and you've run in this marathon. Obviously, you're young, so it would be crazy. But you did this 5K or this 10K or whatever it is, right? So just think about those things. And here's a couple of other sections you can put in if you've ever published, which obviously is hard for someone in high school. But if you have, you can have a section on publications. You can actually put it underneath the skills area as well. Certificates and licenses. Maybe you have a CPR, license or whatever. Maybe you got an extra certificate in AI. Speaking engagements, if you spoke publicly somewhere, you can add that in there as well. Okay, so this is the resume. When you're doing the common application, it will break this down for you and you'll be answering it in the format of the common application the way it wants. If you don't do it for the common application and you have to apply it to a school, then please follow this formatting in terms of these mechanisms to think about for the resume. All right, again, let me know if there's any questions regarding any of this. Okay, quickly, letters of recommendation. The reason they have it is because it's a subjective assessment of who you are. They're not just listening to you, telling them how great you are. There's someone else that's corroborating what you're saying, okay? So that's why they look at it and they put a lot of weight on it. You should request letters of recommendation 2 to 3 months before they're due so that you really give the person the time to do it. You ensure the quality and the timely submission of the letter of rec. Don't just kind of ask them last minute because you'll get a crappy letter of rec, probably written by ChatGPT with literally no effort and very not well structured and bespoke to you. Things to consider, the people to consider asking in terms of who. Your professors, academic is extremely important for college. So you definitely want to have your teacher, your counselor, somebody who can speak to your academic prowess, right? That sense of curiosity and capability. Extracurricular, that sense of collaboration and creativity, curiosity in some ways as well. You can ask your coach or your club advisor for any club that you're a part of. Professional, again, level of commitment, level of collaboration, if you have that opportunity. And even current students and alums. So if you're applying to, let's say, Boston University and you have a dear friend of yours who's there, you can ask that student to write a letter of rec, but not the core letters, just a supplementary letter. Do not ask your friend to write a letter for you if it's one of your core. So I mean, have 3 that are core, and then you can always submit an extra one to BU saying, listen, I love BU and here's an extra letter for you. It's something I did, not in college, I did it in law school, and it really was great. I had somebody from Berkeley Law submit an extra letter. I had somebody from Harvard, some NYU, from Columbia, from Yale submit separate letters in addition to my 3 core ones. Do not ask, though, your family and friend because it loses its veracity because they'll think that person's obviously going to write it or you wrote it for them. Don't ask someone you're not 100% sure is going to have your back. You want to make sure that that person is really going to have your back at whatever cost. So they have to be your greatest advocate. And within that, don't ask a VIP, like let's just say your school principal, over someone like your teacher simply because they're the principal. You want to make sure that that letter is as bespoke and really has your back, okay? Cool. Any questions on that? Pop it in the chat. Financial aid, I'm going to quickly go through this because there's a lot more that we need to cover. But there are different buckets of where you can get financial aid. Student fellowships and loans. There's student scholarships and fellowships. There's also loans, especially in America. Some of them you'll be able to qualify for, some you won't. There's other sources like grants. You can work on campus. You can negotiate your funding with different schools. Let's say you got into USC and UCLA. USC gave you 10,000. You go to UCLA, say, I really want to go to your school, but USC, which is ranked very similar, gave me 10,000. Can you offer me more? They say, sure, here it is, or no, this is not. You can, if they say, sure, here's 10,000, UCLA gives it to you, you go back to USC and say, listen, UCLA gave me 10,000. Can you beat it? And they may come back and say, no, we can't. This is all we can give. Or sure, we'll beat it. And then they beat it. And then they give you maybe 15,000. You go back to UCLA and UCLA, we can't match that anymore. Now you have some optionality, right? Very, very important to do that. I gave you some resources there you can kind of quickly think about in terms of financial aid. And I'll quickly tell you the way I graduated debt-free from college is I did receive student grants. I did receive some scholarships as well, but I did internships while I was a student. I did summer jobs when I was in between years. So my junior year, my senior year, I worked so I could make extra money. I budgeted very, very carefully as well. So I think these are some of the things that you want to be thinking about. Even if you don't get money in school, when you're a student, you will get money. While you're a student. As I said, you could work, you could do work study, you could get scholarships even as a student because you show them how smart you are and how well you did, which is what I did. I did very well at UCLA. I went back to the honors department. I told them I was doing very well. I showed them my grades and they're like, hey, why don't you apply to a couple of scholarships? I did, and I got the funding for it. All right. Now, I'm not going to spend as much time as I would otherwise like, because again, we're limited by an hour. And in fact, I'm going to ask you, especially for this part of the process, to really buy the mastery course, because there's so much. I wrote a chapter that's almost like 20, 30 pages long just to master the art of writing a story. And I would be doing it an injustice if I try to fire through it in a couple of minutes. So I'm just going to show you one thing that should hopefully whet your appetite to force you to think to yourself, wow, there's so much more to this. Maybe I should do more investigating. And as I said, the master course is available for you from that perspective. And we just posted it right there. collegeadmissionsmasterycourse.com is where you go to buy the course. All right. What I want to quickly show you guys is this concept. I swear to you, I was just talking to a client recently, and the guy had his essays from a previous year where he was not accepted to school. When I was reading them, I was like, man, you're missing something so important. He was not starting his essays with an action, with some way of grabbing them, of pulling them into the story, like a movie. How does your essay start, right? He wasn't doing that. And so every essay was starting so bland, and it took like 2-3 paragraphs to finally get to being who he is and being more unique and really getting to the crux to answer the question. By then, you've lost the admissions committee. They're bored. They don't care anymore, right? So this is really where you need to shine, and you need to kind of follow a structure like this. So we've got the action in the beginning that pulls them in. Then we've got the development in the second paragraph about who you are and your values, what you stand for. Then in the third paragraph, we talk about all that you have done, right? That really fits into who you are and living what you are, right? Living it in terms of pure and utter authenticity. This is who I am. This is how I have lived based on who I am and what I've done, and direction where you want to go, right? It's the height of the whole thing. It's the crux. It's the breaking point. Do you want to go and not go to college and just become, I don't know, I can't even tell you, but just not go to college? Or you want to go to college and pursue medicine, or you want to go to college and pursue engineering so that you can do 1, 2, 3 in life. And so direction really is about, think about where you want to go in your life. And where you want to go, you want to be thinking about E, which is to get to where I want to go. Here's how I can get there. And that's the educational school, the program itself, and the school itself. So if I told you, back when I was in college, I said, I really want to become a lawyer because I love public speaking. I love advocacy as a hyphenated identity between being Middle Eastern and being American. I really feel that I have a really great opportunity to do 1, 2, and 3. And so I want to pursue advocacy and potentially law. To get there, I really want to perfect my ability to publicly speak, to analytically think, and to creatively and effectively write. And therefore, I want to major in history and political science, which is what I did. So that's kind of talking about E, education, for the purpose of D, direction. And then finally, F, finale, which brings the whole story, beginning, middle, end, brings the whole story back to the beginning so that this action sequence that you started with is answered effectively, right? So you started off with an action, you bring it back full circle to the closure of that action. And that's why I said, think about your life like a movie, because what you do is you start off with an action, you develop your character, you develop the story, you tell the audience which direction you're going to go, you show them what you need to get towards that goal, and then finally bring the whole essay back full circle. All right. You guys will get tons more about this, really digging into it when you look at the mastery course, because I really break down each and every component, what to write, how to write, and giving examples of this process. All right. One quick thing I want to kind of go through, because I want to answer a question that most likely we've had come up quite a few times in these webinars. But first thing is ideating and outlining. Ideating and outlining is the way that you start. So to ideate, you're like, well, Hamad, how do I start writing this essay? I don't even know. Just start throwing ideas down on paper, tons of them, all your ideas, everything about you, everything that makes you unique, everything that really hones in those 5 core, or now we're calling them 6 core C's, right? The capability, I know I'm going to miss one, so forgive me. Let's go. Capability, curiosity, commitment, creativity, collaboration, and blah. I always will forget the last one. Yep, I forgot it. But you get the point. Go back to those 6 C's and make sure that you are writing out ideas that really showcase each one of those. What have I done for collaboration? What have I shown compassion? What have I shown curiosity? How am I flexing my capabilities? How am I flexing my commitment? That was the other C, commitment, right? And then after you've ideated, start putting them down, saying, okay, now I've got all these ideas. Now we're going to select these 3 ideas for this essay. Right? So after you're free writing, right, what we call free writing and brainstorming, you start to take those ideas, formulate a narrative, and then break down the essay into the paragraphs that we talked about, A, B, C, D, E, F, A, B, C. So you start with, here's my overall theme. A, here's the attention grabber from the beginning. Here's how I'm going to talk about this in terms of my background, my career, academic and professional things that you've done. Here's what direction I want to go. Here's why that school will help me get there. Here's the finale, right? A, B, C, D, and put bullet points, okay? Then you start taking those bullet points and making them into sentences and into paragraphs. And then you refine it all in terms of the editing process and the perfecting process, in terms of syntax, responsiveness to the question, how unique it is, and really cleaning it up until the essay is fantastic. Now, ideating and outlining can be done using AI to kind of come up with ideas. But the writing, the drafting, and the editing has to be on your own without AI. Right? So ideating, outlining, you can use it. Do not use it if you're drafting and editing. Why? Because they have tools like GPT-0, which will read your essay and tell the admissions committee that you're using AI. And that's not good, because the use of pure AI to write and edit, essentially, in the end of the day, is not showing your merit. It's not showing your intellectualism. It's not showing your ability to write. It's just having you fire in a prompt and then it produces it for you. That's not going to showcase anything that the school is looking for in terms of authenticity. Okay. Quickly, I want to tell you, think about those second opinions to help support you in the process. You want to be thinking about a mentor, someone that knows you, that can think about your essays from a personal perspective if they are in line with who you are. Then think about an admissions specialist, somebody who knows the whole admissions process, right? In terms of figuring out, yes, this was what the schools look for. This is how to write it effectively for the purpose of admissions. And then finally, someone who's a great writer who can actually make sure that all those things come together beautifully and that what you're producing, what you're thinking about is outstanding and will allow you to stand out. The beauty of it is, as a shameless plug for Right Track, this is exactly what Right Track does, right? We're gonna get to know you so well through this process. We'll know exactly what to write to serve you best and let you stand out. We know exactly what the admissions committees are looking for because we've been doing it for 16 years and thousands of students. And we're obviously fantastic writers, as I quickly will show you the caliber of the admissions expert we have on staff that can be able to do this, okay? But if you don't want to work with us and you have someone else, make sure that you find second opinions and people that can help you that have these qualities. Okay, now that you've completed your application, the resume, the letters of recommendation, those secondary essay questions, all that stuff. Now you have all the application together. Now submitting it quickly. Early decision, early action, regular decision. Here are the pros and cons. You guys can research this on your own, but I kind of quickly outlined some of it here. Early decision is binding. Early action is not binding. Both of them require you to apply early. Both of you give you an advantage that there's more applicants that are admitted from those who apply early decision and early action than regular decision, but regular decision is rolling admission. So you should still apply early so that you can also qualify. The other thing is regular decision allows you to negotiate financial aid, while by early decision does not, because once you apply early decision and if you're accepted, you have to go. It's contractually obligatory. So you cannot negotiate with other schools your financial aid. Okay, but think about when you want to apply and which one you want to apply into: early decision, early action, and regular decision. All right, and you can easily look this up and figure out which school you want to apply in terms of those. And what you're going to be doing is creating an Excel spreadsheet or whatever is equivalent, and you're going to have all the schools that you're interested in terms of reach, target, and safety schools, like we talked about. And then you're going to write why you want to go to that school, which major you want to pursue. What are the costs, where it's located, all that stuff. And then you're going to have a column that says when to apply. You're going to say this one is early decision, these two are early action, the rest of these are going to be regular decision. Okay. And obviously with Right Track, we will help you figure out which ones, when to apply, and so forth. That best gives you the best chances of admission. All right. Submission tips: proofread before you submit. Submit earlier rather than later, right? But don't submit too early, because you don't want to have kind of a half-baked application just because you're trying to get it out the door when you could have spent an extra week or two to really perfect it. And then finally, address any issues before you submit. Kind of you're about to submit, the school quickly writes back to you and says, hey, you submitted, but you forgot this one thing that you have to do. Then you'll have time before the deadline to do that, right? You don't want to apply on the deadline. Post-submission, you want to keep active, right? So that if you're waitlisted or deferred, which we're going to talk about quickly, you have the opportunity to talk about that as well and say, hey, since I last applied, I did 1, 2, 3, 4. So you want to stay active. You want to also get great grades so that you can prepare yourself. So like, as I said, you want to ace the AP classes, the IB examinations, because I know the IB is in that final part of your high school career. I remember for me, and I was already admitted into schools, but some schools, especially in the UK, will give you a contingency saying if only you receive 3 A's in your A levels or straight 6s in your higher level IBs, that's the only way that you'll be admitted. So it's conditional acceptance. So you want to constantly stay active and be on top of your A game in terms of your academics. You've got prepare for the interview. So you want to make sure that you crush the interview and you really prepare for that and you don't default on that as well. We'll talk, I think we're going to talk a little bit about that, but it's going to be again in the course. So make sure I have a whole chapter on interviewing. I think it's chapter 14. Follow up with the schools. If you haven't heard back by March, April, start reaching out to them saying, hey, just want to double check. Is there anything else you needed from me? I just want, to make sure that, there's no issues with my application and so forth. All right. College interview. There it is. As I love my 5 C's, here are my 6 P's. So you want to be prepared. Here's some things to think about: looking at past questions, practicing and rehearsing in front of a mirror, in front of a friend, prepare questions for the interviewer itself, look at hot button topics, do all the research about the school. And the way I like to think about being prepared, you can divide that up into knowing yourself, which means looking at your application materials and knowing why you want to apply to that school, knowing your school, and then knowing your interviewer. So know yourself, know the school, know the interviewer. Super, super important. Break down your approach doing that. Again, this is chapter 14 in the mastery course, so you can look it up there, but that really kind of covers those areas, and we'll dig a little deeper on that. Once you've prepared, now you want to start thinking about what I need to be thinking about just before the interview, during the interview, and right after the interview. So you've got be presentable, which is super important. I think very, very important for you to be presentable in the interview in terms of how you dress, how you present yourself, right? Be punctual. Make sure all your technology is working. If it's a video like this, or if you're going to them in person, you want to make sure you arrive well ahead of time so that you're not sweating in a hot mess, but you feel comfortable and you're ready to rock and roll. So you want to be punctual. You want to be professional during the actual interview in terms of how you speak, not to use slang. You want to come off. It's a professional, exchange. But you also want to be personable. So you want to balance it off. You don't want to be too stuffy, but you want to feel comfortable as well to have that engagement and really be able to create that congeniality connection with your interviewer. And then finally, after the interview, you want to be polite by sending them an email and thanking them for their time and, expressing your desire to go to that school and, wishing for the best, right? Don't write right back to them and say, hey, just want to see, how do you think I did? Did I ace it? Am I going to get in? Hell no. Do not do that. You want to just basically be polite and thank them for their time. All right. How are candidates evaluated? These are obviously the main ones to think about. The SAT, standardized tests, the GPA and your courses, your profile, how unique you are, right? Your application materials that we've been talking about, which really encapsulates a lot of these factors. The resume, specifically kind of what activities you've done and so forth. The demonstrated interest in the school, which obviously is important, because that's where you kind of showcase, I visited the campus, I spoke to Bob, I entered this class, I really love your school. So you want to show that you're really interested in the program itself. And then we've already talked about the interview. But these bubbles kind of showcase what are the biggest factors that the school looks for when evaluating a candidate, okay? Either you're denied, where you really don't have much choice unless it's a massive clerical error, right? You could be deferred or waitlisted. And that's where we talk about the letter of continued interest, which the first part of it talks about what you've done since you applied. And the second part of it talks about that demonstrated interest, why you really want to go to that school, right? And then if you got accepted, hold on, don't accept immediately, because here you want to kind of make sure that the financial aid package works for you, or you want to negotiate it. You want to confirm that it's the best fit in terms of the academics, in terms of social life. I would revisit the campus again before you accept it, okay? So those are your three options in terms of what happens afterwards. So let's quickly recap. Over the summer, you're enrolling in, we talked about summer activities, staying active, enroll in standardized testing, figure out what major and what colleges you're going to apply to, start preparing your application materials, make sure you've verified your GPA and got all your transcripts sorted. Then the submissions process between September and December, so that's coming up, and you want to make sure that you do not submit later than December. That's just way too late. You really want the sweet spot is September, October, and November, especially obviously if you're applying early decision, early action. Financial aid, you're already doing the research and you're on top of that, checking out those visas, the visa application process, the housing process on or off campus, and then finally the final decision in terms of what you should be thinking about and so forth. All right. Here's a checklist for international students. I may go a little bit over time because I want to make sure I give you guys talk about this, but these are just some things to think about when applying. What medical insurance you're going to have. Obviously, the school needs to provide that in most cases, but you want to make sure that's all buttoned up. The phone plan. Did you take your English proficiency exam? Make sure you attend. This is just not in any particular order, but some things to kind of think about. Phone plan, banking, housing, getting, a bank account and so forth so your parents can send you cash. Or if you get scholarships, they want to deposit it somewhere, right? Did you, signing up for the standardized test, signing up for the English proficiency exam, the school selection, maybe focusing on the international community, the visa application, which you don't want to leave to the last minute. So you want to make sure you got all your ducks in a row. You've spoken to the US Embassy or the UK Embassy or whatever it is. So you make sure that you have, you know what the schools are going to need and start preparing that material, figuring out the financial aid, because obviously the schools are going to care about that. Before you go, you have to show proof that you are able to financially support yourself and pay for the tuition. And then once you're admitted, make sure that you attend the orientation program. Don't sit in your respective country and say, I'm going to skip orientation, just go day one. You definitely want to go to orientations because it's a chance where you can meet other students and really get involved in the whole process, okay? So those are some things to think about in terms of international students. I'm going to skip over this. It's just something to think about in terms of how to succeed in college. Being social, taking on leadership activities, hyper-focusing on your academics, because it helps you get financial aid, it helps you with jobs, it helps you with graduate school. Study abroad, put yourself, as they say, be comfortable in discomfort and the unknown, and study abroad helps you get there, and it really kind of helps you personally grow. And then stay healthy in terms of mental health and physical health. I have a whole chapter dedicated to Slash in the guidebook, so make sure that you check it out and check out the master course so we can dig into that. And now, lastly, let me quickly tell you who we are. We've been doing this, as I said, since 2008, about a 93% success rate into the top 75 schools in America. Well, we've helped people from about 34 nations, which I'm super proud of. And that's a testament to me as a founder, having traveled a lot, as well as my team being very international in terms of speaking different languages and so forth. We've been around for 16 years. We've helped people into about 129 programs in different colleges in terms of different majors and so forth. And what I really love is that we've helped people, fast track the process. So it takes about 50% less time to do the work, which I think is extremely, extremely important. We cut the time down so that we reduce your stress and increase your admissions success. One other statistic I don't have in here is that we've helped people about $20.5 million. We've helped students attain in scholarships and grants and financial aid over the years. So working with us means you have a better application, which means you are more sought after by that university, which means there's a likelihood that they would give you financial aid as well. Okay, let me quickly show you the 3 different programs we have. For 9th graders, we have something called Pre-Seed, which is really about putting people on the right track for high school. And it's short, it's only about a month or 2. Then you've got Seed, which is for 10th graders. And that's about a 3 or 4 month program to make sure that we're building on what we've already discussed as a freshman. Then we've got Compass, which is a lot more in depth, and it's much more, it's kind of like having your own bespoke, personalized high school counselor with you, which I think is a very popular program, and it really gets you to become the best college candidate possible. And then finally, in your last year, just as you're a rising 12th grader, we have something called CAP, which is called Admissions Assessment Program. We have actually, it's called ICAP for internationals, because we also provide a psychometric test, and we focus it a little bit more on international students. So we have that, and that's shorter. Compass is much, much longer. It's a year long. This one's much shorter. It just gives you a snapshot of kind of where you are in the process. All right. This is the team. Quickly just going down the list. She graduated top of her class from University of Virginia, got into Stanford, also went to, I think, Oxford as well. She went to undergraduate at Harvard and graduate school at Harvard. He graduated top of his class from Princeton and is doing his master's at Oxford. He went to NYU for law school. She went to the University of Chicago, is doing her PhD. These are just a small snippet. I have other folks that have done incredible things. So the team is really international. They speak Arabic, they speak Hindi, they speak different languages that really allow us to have a broad breadth of internationalism. So that's why we say we're diverse, accomplished, and really experienced as admissions experts. We've gotten to people in these top programs, as you can see, UCLA, Stanford, Duke, Penn, Berkeley, all these top programs. So we've had incredible success over the years by really developing the profile, putting together the application, acing the application, and then really kind of helping them with the interview to get into their top choice programs. And that is pretty much it. We're only 2 minutes over the limit. I'm out of oxygen. Guys, 25% if you use that code to get the book. We will reach out to probably one of you to give you guys the mastery course for free. Please spread the idea, spread the wealth. If anyone's interested in what we do, please refer our services. We also have what we call the R3, reciprocal referral rewards, whereby anyone you refer will give you $100 off our services and give them $100 off our services as well. So we really want to be able to help and really create that community. Thank you, my friends, for watching. I don't see any more questions. If you do have any questions, please do send it to us online or by email. We'll do our best to answer them. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Stay curious, stay healthy, and we really look forward to getting you guys on the right track to success.